Regan Slaymaker for International Boxing News, and I have the pleasure to welcome you to episode 2 of This Week in Boxing, where we've got a lot to run through, and I'm going to try and keep this as a short video as possible, but there is so much boxing to catch up on a blockbuster week in the world of boxing. First up, Friday night, Matchroom Boxing's Next Gen, headlined by the former Olympian and Team GB amateur standout Patrick the Bomber Brown, headlined at Planet Ice in Altrincham. This is one of the rare occasions that I wasn't actually ringside for, but I watched it. I like watching boxing on the telly. It's a rarity for me these days. But it was a really good Next Gen show. I mean, the back-to-back Next Gen shows that have delivered. The George Liddard show, headlined by him against Derek Azarcy, and then Junaid Bostan versus Bilal Fawaz. That show really delivered, and this show was more of the same. Well, Pat Brown secured the fourth round TKO victory against Federico Grandoni. I mean, what a tough man Federico Grandoni was. I mean, it was probably in hindsight a tougher fight than what you were probably expecting from a debut. Obviously, he was headlining as well. There was a lot of pressure on him. Grandoni took a lot of punishment in there against the hard-hitting Pat Brown. But yeah, I mean, Grandoni was making it competitive in places. He really was. But I mean, Brown in the end, he showed his class. He secured the stoppage victory, and there's a lot to like about Patrick the Bomber Brown. There's a lot of push behind him with his manager Sam Jones. The promo of him is excellent. The whole Old Trafford kind of settings as well, and he's got some really good trainers behind him in a really good stable with Jamie Moore, Nigel Travis, and Jack Cattrall, and the like. A lot to like about Pat Brown. There's not too much to say about the main event, other than that. Then it was a debut, and there's a lot to like. But without a doubt, fight of the night on the undercard was the absolute ding dong for the English super middleweight title between Reece Farnhill and Mark Dickinson. I mean, these are the perfect type of fights for these next gen cards, or to open kind of the main bills on Matchroom shows, right? Two guys kind of English title, not level, but it's for the English title. Reece Farnhill, the champion, fighting a Matchroom guy, Mark Dickinson. I thought Mark Dickinson won it quite clearly. I thought the scorecards reflected that, but Reece Farnhill kind of made it as competitive as he can do throughout. It was a really good fight, and the thing is, there's a lot to like about Mark Dickinson. As we know, we've seen him kind of go through the ranks on the Matchroom cards, and then he fights, then he loses in the prize fighter tournament against the guy who not many people here in England know about, but really good fighter from Japan as well. I mean, he goes on. He picks up more momentum to where he was. He picks up the momentum from where he was before that tournament. And Reece Farnhill, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Matchroom had him back, or he headlined kind of in his hometown on a smaller hall show. I mean, there's a lot to like about Reece Farnhill, but Mark Dickinson gets the win there and follows in his family's footsteps in winning that English title. It's an absolute banger. If you haven't seen it, make sure you watch Reece Farnhill versus Mark Dickinson for the English super middleweight title. Cameron Vuong stops Jordan Flynn in the long anticipated grudge match to win the WBO European lightweight title. I mean, it was a 7th round TKO win for Vuong. I did think he started a little bit slow. I gave Flynn the early rounds, but eventually what I thought was going to happen was then Vuong overrun Flynn in the end and stopped him as well. But Flynn made it. He never stopped trying. Fair play to Flynn in that regard. But Vuong showed his class. He showed his level in there, and I think it was the perfect fight in the in-between time to go into that Gavin Gwynne rematch. That's the only fight I think now for Cameron Vuong is that rematch with Gavin Gwynne. The first fight I thought Gwynne won that fight. I thought his pressure, and I thought he'd done enough to win that fight. It was a contentious decision by many people. I thought Gwynne edged it. A lot of people did. That was kind of the consensus afterwards. But then also Barry Jones, who is a boxing pundit who I take his opinion quite seriously as well. He thought it was close. He thought Gwynne nicked it, but he didn't think it was a scream up robbery. But Yeah, I thought Gwyn won that first fight back in November, and I wasn't against Vuong taking this in between fight, and I think the Flynn fight was the perfect fight to have in between. I think now he's gone through that kind of quote unquote backlash after the first Gwyn fight, getting the decision, not his fault. But a lot of people are going to be talking about him. A lot of people are going to be judging him, basing him off that performance and things like that. But now he's taken his time. He's gone through that. He's had the interim fight in between. Got a stoppage win. He's back to everyone's going to be hyping around him. That was a really well built fight between Flynn. He's going to have a lot of hype around him now, where it was maybe before the Gwyn fight. He's back with the same kind of spice kind of now. Everyone's going to be talking about him again. And now I think that rematch with Gavin Gwynne is perfect. He's also gone out and he's sparred Shakur Stevenson as well. He's done all the right things that fighters need to do to prepare for that next level. And I think that next level has got to be that rematch with Gavin Gwynne. I mean, a lot to like about Cameron Vuong as well. And again, part of the same stable as Pat Brown with Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis as well. But I mean, a lot to like about him. Wins elsewhere on the card for William Croller, and a really good win. He showed a little bit of something that we'd not seen yet outside of his punching power against Emmanuel Zion. I thought the scorecards was bang on. I think Croller by a point. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh. I thought that was exactly fair, but I thought Croller was the deserved winner, and he showed a lot more than just this punching power that we've seen. It was a really, really good watch. That Connor Tudsbury get to win. Taylor Bevan, a lot to like about Taylor Bevan. And I think he's back out on the Johnny Fisher undercard on May the 17th. Eddie Hearn confirmed that afterwards, and Liam Taylor securing a win and therefore securing his mandatory position for Conor Walker for the British welterweight title as well. Saturday night, Michaela Mayer defended her WBO welterweight world title in the rematch with former champion Sandy Ryan. From what I've seen and what I've watched from the fight, a different fight from the first. I mean, Mayer winning a unanimous decision win, 98-92 and 97-93 twice in what was a clearer win than the first fight. Obviously, majority decision last time out. I watched the first fight back before Saturday night, and I scored it 95-95. But yeah, so Mayer keeps that WBO title. There is only one fight for Michaela Mayer now, and there's only one fight for Lauren Price as well, and that's the fight between the two undisputed welterweight world titles. I mean, what a fight that is! Both exceptional fighters, both proven at world level. I've just seen an interview between Eddie Hearn and Charlie Parsons, and kind of Eddie Hearn was saying she's so difficult to beat, Michaela Mayer. I mean, her work rate is exceptional. She's an exceptional boxer as well. The thing is, so is Lauren Price. And Lauren Price, while she's always impressed me when I've watched her, that win against Natasha Jonas was excellent. I think as a fighter as good as Natasha Jonas is and was and still is, Lauren Price made it look quite easy in there that night. And Michaela Mayer's just UD'd Sandy Ryan, who was arguably the number one in the division before, picking up that title as well. It's one of those fights. It's a pick and fight, and I think wherever that fight is, whether it's in Cardiff, whether it's in London, whether it's in Las Vegas, whether it's in New York, just make it happen. Top ranking boxer have made fights before. Let's do it. I know there was a bit of Michaela Mayer told Steve Bunce after the fight that she's not going to Wales for the wrong amount of money. My God, please pay the right amount of money. Just because it's this side of the pond, just get it. For a selfish perspective, get that fight as close to the UK as possible, because that is an absolute crack of the undisputed welterweight world titles between Lauren Price and Michaela Mayer. And just on a side note as well, Sandy Ryan obviously was one of the first people that we interviewed on this channel, one of the first fighters we got on this channel when I went up to the One Nation boxing gym. So obviously she's a Brit who no longer has a world title, and obviously from a selfish perspective, we want the Brits to keep the world titles, because then we can make these big grudge matches that we like to see. Obviously, from a selfish perspective, Lauren Price versus Sandy Ryan. It's been amateur history there. We'd like to see that. But what I will say, and I was just prefaced it there with Steve Bunce talking to Michaela Mayer. If you go on to Five Live Boxing's podcast with Steve Bunce on Spotify, and all available on all good platforms, the post-fight chat between Steve Bunce and Sandy Ryan. I mean, if you didn't rate Steve Bunce as a journalist before, my God, it's one of the. It just proves why he's one of the. I've done a tweet. It's one of the best. It proves why he's one of the best journalists in sport, let alone boxing. He was considerate. He was honest with. He was considerate to Sandy Ryan, considering the circumstances. He was honest with her as well. He was kind, but he was also reassuring. Sandy Ryan was obviously high with emotion after that fight. Like she's saying all sorts of things about the future of her career. Boxing's difficult and things like that. But Steve Bunce is saying to it, no, you're still a world level operator. You're still this isn't the end. You can still win a world title. And it was just one of the most brilliant pieces and most considerate piece of journalism that I've seen. So if you haven't seen that, make sure to watch it. And I cannot wait to see Sandy Ryan back in the ring, and I cannot wait to see Michaela Mayer versus Lauren Price. It's the only fight to make. Also on that card, Brian Norman Jr. Defends his WBO welterweight world title against Derek Cuevas, and Abdullah Mason also picks up another win to continue his kind of ascent to world titles. Moving on, Sunday night, Konstantin Ursu. Konstantin Ursu made a serious statement to the welterweight division, stopping Ethan James to win the Commonwealth welterweight title with a stunning 7th round KO win. I mean, he was in full control of the fight, in my opinion. James making it competitive, having success, kind of, but he didn't have the punch power to keep Ursu off him, which allowed, obviously, I think the punches were registering more with James. Ursu's punches were registering with Ethan James more so than James's punches were registering with Ursu, and he didn't drop around, in my opinion, and then. I mean, unbelievable knockout. Right, he landed the jab and then detonated the left hand on Ethan James's chin. Really is a contender for knockout of the year, and I feel like that'll only kind of boost those top tier shows. Those top tier shows are really, really competitive, but when they have a really, really good main event with the legitimate titles, or legitimate names, I know the Commonwealth title has a legitimate title. And top tier had it on headlining, and I think it brought more eyes to that show. It's like when Jimmy Sains and George Little went on top tier, they were Matchroom prospects headlining, doing a dual headliner on that show. I mean, it provides more legitimacy to them, and those shows are really, really competitive, even if they don't have the higher brow names on them. It was an excellent night of boxing throughout, but Konstantin Ursu, I mean, wins the Commonwealth title, but also reaffirms his position as mandatory challenger for the British title as well. His final eliminator against Dan Booth, he won that a while ago. That made him mandatory for the British and Commonwealth. The Ethan James fight for the Commonwealth was approved, and now he's still mandatory for Conor Walker's British title. Obviously, Liam Taylor's the mandatory before the mandatory, because there was a bit of a backlog. But yeah, now he's reaffirmed that position. He does return May the 25th against Ryan Amos, keeping him busy, which is a good fight in itself. Ryan Amos only losing to Junaid Bostan and Bilal Fawaz. Interestingly, those two obviously fought to a draw as well for the English title at super welterweight. But yeah, a lot to like about Konstantin Ursu. And yeah, here's what Konstantin said to me about his win and about the stoppage for Not Just Boxing after the main event.
We make the plan, and I think he is tough. Yeah, we think he is tough, but maybe a little surprised how tough he is. And after I think, all right, we change plan B, and plan B works.
A man of few words, but a very, very honest man, and he can predict the future. If you watch all of my interviews before his fight with Dan Booth, on International Boxing News and the fight and the interviews before his fight with Ethan James. Everything he says he does. But a really, really good fighter and a lot to like about Konstantin Ursu. Yeah. I mean, a stacked card on Sunday night. Wins for Kevin Agarko. Kevin Revell beats Grant Dennis. That's a really good win for Kevin Revell. And he's the definition of records of a DJs. He's thrown himself into the mix against people probably a little bit better than him, but he wants to prove himself and he wants to have some good fights. So it's good to see that Kevin Revell gets a win against Grant Dennis, who has fought at a higher level than him. And I imagine Kevin Revell gets a Southern Area title fight. He gets a title fight after that win. Laura Payne, Stevie Levy, shout out Maple Tree Bakes. Stevie Levy gifted me some brownies after her win, and they were lovely. So Maple Tree Bakes, link in the description. Daniel Crotter, Emanzo Parashev, all securing wins. But the one fighter I want to highlight from this card is Zachary Fee. I mean, really one to watch. Not even from just the small hall scene, but from British boxing in general. The Singapore kid, 20 years old, super bantamweight, beat Darwin Martinez 77-74 in a really, really good fight. Martinez is better than his record suggests. The only times he's been really beaten comfortably in recent times is against Andrew Kane, who stopped him in a round, and Tom Welland, who also stopped him, and that's really, really good company. But he's a lot better than his record suggests. I remember him having a really, really good fight with Kurt Walker in Belfast as well, so an Olympian there. But Zach Fee, he won on my scorecard with the knockdown that he scored in round 2. But what really, really impressed me about Zach Fee is his powers of recovery. Martinez did hurt him a few moments in the fight, you could see, but when he did, he recovered almost instantaneously, where a lot of boxers, especially at 20 years old, could have folded quite easily. But he recovered really quickly. He listened to instruction, and he pushed through to the fight, and he won the fight. And he won the fight on the judges' scorecard and my very unofficial scorecard. But a lot to like about Zach Fee. Johnny Clark was talking about putting him for Southern Area titles next. I think maybe one more. There is a lot to like about Zach Fee, who moved to 7-0 on the fight card, and I think he's only a couple fights away from those domestic titles, Southern Area titles, and at only 20. He's a really, really high ceiling. And if he carries on the way he's going, really good fighter. Does sparring with unified world champion Ellie Scottney as well. Really good fighter, Zach Fee. One to watch. Now it's time for the news. The IBF, the news in the last week. This is a massive big one, and I'm booking my flights to Belfast ASAP. The IBF has officially ordered a rematch between Lewis Crocker and Paddy Donovan following Donovan's controversial disqualification against Lewis Crocker on May the 1st. It's a final eliminator for the IBF welterweight world title held by Jaron Ennis. So the timings of this is really, really interesting. Jaron Ennis unifies the division against Imantas Stanionis for the IBF and WBA. There's a lot of talk about Jaron Ennis moving up even before this. If Jaron Ennis wins in that unification, unless he stays to become undisputed, which a lot of talk before this fight was announced, that wasn't the case. That was the case of him moving up to super welterweight. If he wins and moves up, this could be for the IBF welterweight world title. That's absolutely massive for both Paddy Donovan and Lewis Crocker. And I know there's been a lot of talk about Billy Nelson being against the IBF's ruling on this situation, but if this fight is for the world title, that is the massive carrot that would persuade Team Crocker to go into that rematch. Crocker has the win against Paddy Donovan. Beforehand, they might not. If this wasn't ordered, they probably wouldn't have gone into this rematch. But the IBF ruling this fight, there is no world title fight for Lewis Crocker especially with the IBF, without going into this fight. One thing I do want to discuss about this is the IBF's ruling that was in the Ring Magazine article that was published about this. The decision and the ruling by the IBF president is cited that because the referee Marcus McDonnell, this is a direct quote, the referee Marcus McDonnell not being in an optimal position to intervene at the end of the round, and Donovan being unable to hear the bell before throwing the final punches is the reason why the IBF have ordered this immediate rematch between Crocker and Donovan. So they have distinctly said that Marcus McDonnell was at fault in the ending that led to Donovan's disqualification, which is really interesting. I'd like to see if the British Boxing Board of Control kind of, I don't know, release a response to that. I'm not sure they will, but really interesting wordings from the IBF around that decision. But yeah, Team Donovan win their appeal. In other news, Fernando Puma Martinez and Kazuto Ioka officially rematch for the WBA Super Flyweight World Title on May the 11th in Tokyo. A rematch that was for the IBF and WBA, but they had to drop the IBF because of a mandatory. Excellent fight first time, and I'm sure we'll get an excellent fight again the second time. More IBF ordering, this time not as positive as the Crocker Donovan one in many people's opinions. That the IBF has told Ring Magazine that Daniel Dubois will be ordered to defend his IBF heavyweight world title against Derek Chisora on April the 22nd. I see why they've done that. Derek Chisora's wins against Joe Joyce and Otto Wallin, they're world level names. They were high ranked, I believe, with the IBF. I get it. You please don't make that fight. Please give Derek. Derek's going to want to do it. Who am I to take that opportunity away from Derek Chisora? There's a serious safety element there. Daniel Dubois is one of the most hard punching, ferocious heavyweights in the division, and Otto Wallin was not. Another fight for Derek Chisora's 50th fight, please. And in the final news that I'm going to finish on, Jake Paul and Most Valuable Promotions have signed 4 more female fighters alongside undisputed super featherweight world champion Alicia Baumgardner, the first of which, Ramla Ali, former world title challenger, just lost to Yamaleth Mercado for the WBC super bantamweight world title. Close decision there. And obviously she's a Brit as well, so it's great to see get some more representations with Most Valuable Promotions as well. WBO and WBC bantamweight world champion Dina Thorsland and Ring Magazine champion Dina Thorsland has also signed with Most Valuable Promotions. Excellent platform for her, and I think this is the opportunity now where she gets that breakout moment. This is where the people who don't know get to know quite quickly. And then Nat Dove and Naomi Val also signed to Most Valuable Promotion. That's it. If you have any topics that you want me to consider for the next episodes, please let me know. Put them in the description. Tweet at IntBoxingNews, International Boxing News on X, or International Boxing News _ on Instagram. But yeah, if you want me to discuss anything else, please let me know. In the meantime, as Spencer FC says, don't go changing. Peace.